Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of Simply Nerdy. I'm your host, Steven. I'm joined today by the one and only
Anthony! Hey!
Hey, today we're doing a Thoughts of an Opinionated Nerd episode because Anthony is here to talk about Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition and why I should be excited for it since I have never played this game before. I have no exposure to the series whatsoever, and he's going to talk me into it and tell you why he thinks this is one of the greatest games ever made.
And why you should play it too. This is Xenoblade Chronicles Evangelism 101. I am going to convert you all.
Oh yeah!
In trying to kind of put my finger on why I feel like this is such a special game, I guess the first thing I have to do is kind of compare it to the average JRPG, you know, in that big, all-encompassing genre. There's so many different ways that a game can be a JRPG, but one of the things that I think sometimes the genre can fall to is maybe being a little bit tropey. Sometimes I feel like it's a lot of the same, and that doesn't necessarily make a bad game. Like I'm always getting a little frustrated when people are like, well, I'm going to give this game a much lower score than I otherwise would have if it had been more original or if it had surprised me more. And I feel like that's not a very objective way to rate a game. But that being said, I feel like one of the things that maybe is the first thing that makes Xenoblade Chronicles so special to me, or at least for me, it managed to kind of check those boxes of being something fresh while being the type of JRPG experience that I've grown so fond of over the years. And so I think maybe my focus is on what makes it different and why that makes it special. I think the first thing that kind of really stands out to me that I think sets the groundwork for how good of a game it becomes, as you continue to play, is the setting. JRPGs tend to kind of have unique, fantastical settings, but in some ways, they've almost become predictable in their fantastical nature, where you can always expect, some sort of tropes to always return. And I feel like the first thing Xenoblade Chronicles did when it first came out was to kind of break that mold, where yes, it's a fantastical setting, but it's completely new. I mean, you're literally living on the carcasses of these titans who, fought this age-long battle and then killed each other and developed such a terrible case of rigor mortis that, now you...
Sounds kind of morbid.
Yeah, it's a little morbid. I mean, yeah, like I said, they'd have to have some pretty epic rigor mortis for them to be able to sustain that much life on their carcasses afterwards. Yeah. So anyway, but it's a very interesting idea, and it allows for some very unique area designs. It creates a uniquely compelling world before you even begin exploring it. So that's number one. The world building was something very exciting to me right out the gate. Number two was probably the story. The story was very unique to me, not necessarily because of its plot. I've heard a lot of people suggest that there's, it kind of hits some very familiar tropes. People start in this idyllic village and suddenly, something goes wrong and, a person goes on a quest for revenge or saving the world or etc. Like there's a few of those boxes checked here. And, sometimes I just have to put in a little bit of a thought here on the side. I feel like sometimes people have allowed themselves to become a little bit too jaded with that story because that's kind of the human experience, if you ask me. There's always some sort of tragedy or trial that comes along that we all have to overcome. And so I feel like if that turns you off, then maybe video games are not your thing. But maybe that's a little bit harsh.
That's your problem.
Yes, anyway, I'm gonna get off that point there and just say, despite some of the familiar story beats, the thing that really made it special for me is that they made the writing and the characterization very heartfelt. The characters are just characters that you really connect with. I remember when the developers were originally creating the original Xenoblade Chronicles, they said that one of their main purposes when designing the game was to create a protagonist that people don't hate. And I think that they succeeded not only with Shulk, but with kind of all the characters in the game. And it's not just because of who they are, from a personality standpoint, but but how they rise to each of the occasions. And there's some incredible moments in that game. Honestly, I feel like part of the reason why the story is so special to me is because those moments when the characters are facing some sort of enemy or problem, and you know, the way they rise to it, and then of course the way that they always play that one particular song. You guys, you know, Xenoblade fans, you know what I'm talking about, Engage the Enemy. When they play that and it just goes with the moment and just makes it so powerful. Like, it's a game of powerful moments, and I think that's what makes the story so incredible to me. You know, for those of you who have very liberal definitions of what a spoiler is, be warned here. I'm not going to say anything crazy, but I will just say that you will be surprised at how many twists there are along the way. And maybe that's also something you consider tropey. If that's the case, then maybe you're a little bit too jaded.
I think you've spoiled the whole game for me now, and I can't play it.
Whatever, Steve. Point number 3, I think, and I mentioned this in my previous point. I think one of the other most important things in that game was the soundtrack. Xenoblade Chronicles has one of the best soundtracks of any video game I have ever played. There's almost not a single bad song in that entire soundtrack. I can think of a few that, you know, I like less than others, but for the most part, I hold them all in very high regard. I mean, one of the game's normal battle themes, you know, I've heard more people than I can count be like, "This is the game's normal battle theme? What the heck is like the boss battle themes like?" You know, I mean, it's stellar quality across the board. So, and they use that to really sell the moments, the big moments in the game. And then of course all of this wouldn't really be enough to carry the game if it weren't for the fact that it's an awful lot of fun, if you ask me. It kind of has a lot of similarities to MMORPG battle system styles, but I think that it still manages to kind of take that and turn it into its own thing. What they did is they took the familiar like abilities tied to cooldowns and things like that and auto attacking and kind of turned it into something that was really rather compelling from a single player standpoint. Things like attacking enemy from certain positions, I think that's one of the most compelling additions. And it's not even necessarily one of the most complex things they could have done. But, you know, being able to, say, use backslash from the behind and do a bunch more damage, or slit edge from the side and lower the enemy's defenses. There's a lot of cool ways that they implement the positioning, which kind of makes it all the more immersive rather than you just standing there face tanking the monster and hitting all your cooldown abilities until it's dead or you're dead or whatever. I think one of the biggest things that I love about it was the implementation of the vision mechanic. I found really, really cool because it's basically, you know, if an enemy is about to do a particularly hurtful attack that's going to put you at a great disadvantage, like KO one of your characters or something like that, the game will give you a warning where it flashes forward for a second and shows you a vision of what's about to happen. It shows the attack, the target, and the result. And then it gives you like a certain amount of time after the vision ends to prevent it from happening. And there's multiple ways you can do that. You can, for example, if an attack is going to KO a character, you heal them up, and then it no longer KOs them, and that like increases your party's battle tension. They do better. Their accuracy goes up. They're like, it just affects so many different things.
That sounds kind of cool.
It's really cool. It really is. And then you know, or there's, you know, say for example, the enemy is about to use their talent art, and so you use Monado Shield, which is specifically created to defend against talent arts, and that prevents that, and then that, you know, that leads to a successful vision reaction or whatever you would call that. It's just like a really cool, exciting mechanic that they put into this game, and it makes for a lot of really exciting battles. And then there's the chain attacks. Anyway, speaking to you specifically, Stephen, I know you've said that RPG battle systems are one of those things that you have difficulty, you know, kind of getting into, and I feel like that this is kind of a good touch point for you, because it's definitely more of an active battle system. I mean, you know, you're not mashing buttons to do your attacks, at least the normal attacks, but it allows for more tactical gameplay with your abilities and how you work with your teammates. And at the same time, it's still really active. And so I found that to be a fun kind of hybrid of, you know, those systems.
That is just for me.
That's just, well, it's for anyone who feels the same way.
Anyone who is a JRPG hater like myself.
Hold on, let's rewind a bit. You gotta start by JRPG, what's the word I'm looking for? I can't think of a good word here. You're a newbie to them. Uninitiated.
I am uninitiated.
You cannot be a hater for something you have not tried.
That's true. That's true.
And remember, JRPGs are just about as wide as the ocean in terms of how many different games there are out there. So Xenoblade Chronicles was a game made to be a work of art, is kind of how I see it. Like, all of its different systems come together in a very complementary way to create a game that is special and stays that way. It creates an atmosphere that it never breaks. Of this fantastical world with this compelling plot, this problem that they all have to overcome, and they just really weave every aspect of the game's different systems to bring that to fruition. And it's like a visual novel. It's just an incredible story that it just really sucks you in.
If you were to rate the game based on the original Xenoblade Chronicles, what would you give?
Out of 10, I would start it at least at 9.5.
Nice.
At least. There are things that I would not call it a perfect game. And, there's a lot of fluidity of the definition of a perfect game anyway. I don't know if I would give it a 10, but I would say that it comes awful close, and there's just so many reasons why. Xenoblade Chronicles, the original game, even with its limited, admittedly, very limited graphical capabilities, it managed to wow me, and it's one of the few that has. Those of you who are on the fence and want to give it a try, I could not speak with more fervor for the reasons why you should be excited for this game than I have. And we've got 10 days to go. 10 days that I count on my two hands very, very slowly. I am so excited.
And you heard it here first. Let us know down in the comments if you are just as excited about this game as Anthony. If you played it before, tell me why I should play it, please. And let me know if you're going to play the Definitive Edition day one, like me.
Heck yeah!
And until next time,
keep it nerdy and play Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition.
Now.